Welcome to the Zero Gravity Learning Podcast, where it's all about working smarter and making more money with your passion for wedding photography. And now your host, Cengiz Özel.
So welcome to Zero Gravity Learning. Okay guys, so we did something we normally never do, and that is we interrupted a podcast. A podcast here with ZGL is almost always raw, it's unplugged, it's unscripted pretty much, It's really about one continuous kind of like seating and sharing my thoughts with you. However, yesterday my baby walked in. And so we decided, to interrupt the podcast right there. We had no choice. She is unforgiving. When she sees me, I cannot pay attention. So, and another reason, why we have the motto at ZGL, it's make more money, right? Do more things you like to do with your time, such as spend time with the baby, and really build a thriving career around your passion of wedding photography. Now, let's kind of see what changed. Okay, the weather is still great. This is still Miami Beach. I replaced my glass of wine with an espresso, just to wake up kind of, and a tea. So hopefully that will keep me alert and let me finish. You can also see that I am shaven for those folks who are not listening, who are actually watching. And let me just, as a refresher, kind of say where we left off yesterday. We said, it's very important and essential to gain the trust of your bride, because when she trusts you, she's going to be more likely to book you and you'll have an easier time converting her. We talked a little bit about that there is a fear element where photographers have an ability to book that bride with pressure tactics. We've talked about a few of them where you say, hey, you know what? Your date, I've got 3 people calling for your date. It's going to get away. If I were you, I would book immediately. That tends to work because nobody wants to lose anything. They've already identified you as a potential candidate for their wedding, and the last thing they want to do right now is lose your date. So that's a pretty powerful technique. We don't recommend it because when you use pressure and fear, essentially you may end up booking her, but the fit may not be tremendous. And as a result, she may not be happy with your photos or with your photography experience. She's certainly not going to recommend you if the fit wasn't right from the outset, and you're missing a valuable marketing opportunity down the line. The alternative is to kind of educate her, to lead with benefits, the benefits of working with you, and certainly incentives. Incentives are a great way to get her to book you fast. We'll talk about a few of the incentives that we use, in our own studio with the Dejan Studio, to get the bride to really sign on the dotted line, because you do have to create a sense of urgency, but you don't want to do it through pressure, but through incentives. So we'll talk about that another time. And I believe we left off right about there. And we were talking about the importance of trust. Now, you have to realize that it's not just the bride who's going to be booking you, but sometimes she has a full service planner. Sometimes it's a parent who's going to be making the decision for her. But the idea of trust does not change. So if you're speaking to the planner, there still has to be an element of trust. And it's essential for you to use every opportunity, every touch point you have, to get him to like you, get him to trust you, get him to respect you, and build that authority through what we call education. A very good example is when I do my engagement sessions. So engagement sessions is one of the areas we take a lot of pride in. It's a little bit of a niche, positioning that we have within the wedding photography industry. It's somewhere we see ourselves as a little bit of a thought leader, and it's such an incredible opportunity to distinguish yourself even in the sales process, because they're speaking to a lot of folks. And the photographers may just say, okay, book a collection with me and I will throw in an engagement session for you. That could be an incentive. It's not a great incentive, because anything you throw in as a photographer could be considered free or less of an investment. As a result, they may not respect your engagement session sufficiently come preparation time and when they're actually going to meet you and have that engagement shoot. We, on the other hand, and again, we have our engagement session also as part of our collections, it's optional, but essentially I make them aware of it. It's not a trial, it's not a dress rehearsal. An engagement session is a real opportunity, just like your wedding, for real people to come together, celebrate the uniqueness of their relationship, come back with insanely cool photos, have fun in the process, meet the photographer, And here's where the education starts, and we'll talk about that on a separate podcast, exactly what I do with my engagement sessions. But essentially, there are at least 5 elements we go over once we've set a date and a starting time. That's locations, it's logistics, accessories and attire, props, and the delicate and high art of the kiss, which is kind of an all-encompassing term for, hey, chemistry matters. But essentially, when I have these phone calls with the bride, they're like sitting back and saying, oh my God, that was truly helpful. Nobody's ever really focused that much on the experience part. Everybody's just talking about photos. And this is great because I'm trying to be insanely useful. And let's assume for a second that prospective bride whom I'm trying to book, she likes 2 photographers as much as me. If we've then stood out as a person who's really looking after her benefit and trying to help her, then I think that might actually just tip the scale in our favor. So all to say, education is one of the most powerful ways for you to gain trust, credibility, authority, and be liked. And clearly, once they have that trust with you, they're a little bit more likely to loosen their wallet and they become less price sensitive. A few $100s more or less will not make the difference. Looking back 20 years later, if you actually, put it in her mind that you can make one of the most important days in her life more special through your presence. Now, let's take a little bit of a shift, a pivot, and talk about what you can do. When we were talking about the ideal bride, it was very much a theoretical ideal bride. You've never even met her until today. You've maybe spoken to her on the phone, but typically you've not actually met her. You've tried to attract your ideal bride somewhere in that universe of people getting engaged every single day. They don't know you. All they know from you is pretty much what they see on your website. They may have watched your welcome video. They may have read some of your articles. They've done their research on you. They've looked up some of your awards and publications, but they really don't know who you are. Now, they may ask their best friend. We've talked about their friends and bridesmaids as influencers. And they would lean very heavily on that judgment of the friend. But you want to make sure that that friend of hers can actually give a very compelling argument why this bride should use you. And before she can do that, she has to really understand what makes you different. So she's used you, so she can probably speak passionately to your strengths. But let's assume, anybody who recommends you, they have to be able to summarize in short what makes you different. What is like the number one benefit people get from working with you? How do you talk about yourself? What really makes you different? Why are you worth what you claim to be worth? And we'll talk about that as well. That's an important point. But essentially, there's a technical term on Wall Street called the 30-second elevator pitch. It's kind of like a position statement about yourself. Imagine in New York City, you've got these massive skyscrapers. For those folks who've been watching Godzilla, it's those things that the big monsters stepping on and crushing. They're pretty big. And you have quite some time to go from the bottom to the top floor, and the elevator will take you up. Now imagine further, you're sitting in that elevator, standing in the elevator with somebody you're trying to convince that you belong in the company. And you only have 30 seconds to get it done, because after that you'll be joined by other people and you'll be out of that elevator. You have 30 seconds to communicate the essence of who you are, why you should be a good fit for that company, and why they should hire you. And we don't live on Wall Street, but essentially you don't really have that much time to communicate who you are and what makes you different, why people should be working with you. And this elevator pitch, so-called elevator pitch, is essential if you call up planners, if you do, what we kind of call cold calling people who don't know you. A cold call is basically a call to somebody who does not know you and you want something from them. And when you're building a business as a solo entrepreneur, you have no choice but to actually go out there and call some folks. And they're on the other line. They don't even see you. They don't even know why you're calling them. So you have to, within 30 seconds, be able to communicate very clearly what it is about you, the essence of what makes you different, and whom do you help, and why is it worth their time to meet you or speak to you or recommend you. So without further ado, let me just tell you a little bit about my own elevator pitch, and this is not something that I would say to the bride. I have my phone here that we can just time ourselves. But basically this is more for somebody to refer a bride to you, that they can within 30 seconds really talk about you. You're not going to talk to the bride in 30 seconds. You actually have a little bit more time and actually let her do most of the talking. But when you speak to planners or anybody else whom you want to influence the bride, then you should certainly be able to, in 30 seconds, articulate a little bit what makes you different. So without further ado, I've got my iPhone here. We're going to try to see how long it takes me to kind of get through my 30-second elevator pitch of what I do. And here we go. On 3, 2, 1, go. So I'm worth it because I feel like, when I say I'm worth it, well, I'm on the clock. Let's do this one over again. Stop. Reset. Okay, so the 3 questions I want to basically answer is, whom do I help? What makes me different? And, why should they hire me? These are the 3 elements I have to hit in the elevator pitch. And let's start right there. Okay, so let's start one more time with the clock. And as you guys can tell, let me have a sip of tea before I do that. I'm a little bit under pressure as well here, guys, when I'm timing myself. Okay, so here we go. On 3, 2, 1, here we go. So I help the luxury upscale bride who can pay my bill, who understands the photography experience as it relates to her, overall wedding experience, who actually has a love for photography. And here's what kind of I would say is my niche. I feel like we have a little bit of an edge when it comes to engagement sessions and the reveal on the wedding day. Finally, I say, well, you know what? I feel like my presence alone can single-handedly make better or enhance and be additive to one of the most special days in a human's life through my education before the wedding day, but also through my energy and experience and passion on her wedding day. Well, 48 seconds. That's pretty bad, guys. Okay, anyway, well, give me the break of being in the morning, but essentially, if I rushed through this and I was in an elevator situation, I probably could shave off a few seconds. But there you go, even I need to practice it all the time. You have to be able to articulate these things in 30 seconds or less. Again, we're no academics here, so, if you go over a little bit, it's not, there's no shame in it, but essentially it forces you to be concise and be able to confidently talk about what you do well. And that brings me to the final point on that. Before we move into real life applications, confidence is essential, because there's a difference between confidence and arrogance and haughtiness. When you're confident, you're basically quite self-aware of what you can do well and what you don't do well. And it's important that you can confidently speak to your strengths, because if you don't do it, you know that your peers whom she's speaking with, they do speak confidently about what they can do and about what they will do for the bride. So if you feel like you're worth $5,000 on the wedding day, then you got to truly believe it, because if you don't believe it, why should she believe it? That's very important what I just said. You need to believe whatever you say, because if you don't believe it, she won't believe it. Now, let's get back to the ideal bride in real life, some real life applications. Now that you've kind of, you've identified her, you've had your date with her, you kind of know who she is, you've gained her trust, you have the whole thing down in theory. Now, let's see, once you have that ideal bride in mind, what can you do with it? Now, there are plenty of applications, but let's just start, kind of how I use it. Anything I do, whether it's social media, whether it's blogging, whether it's responding to an email inquiry, I always have this, what do you call it? I would guess imaginary avatar, right? This imaginary picture of my ideal bride hanging, virtually above my desk, because I want to make sure that anything I put on my website, anything I put on social media, any answer I, send out to a bride, or if I reach out to influencers, it always communicates that message I want to do to my ideal bride. So, this is a good trick for you guys. Imagine your ideal bride with everything you do. So if you shoot a great photo, you absolutely love it, and it does not kind of, it does not kind of resonate with your ideal bride, then you have to be able to let it go. And this is a good lesson. I learned this one way back in 11th grade when my English teacher, She said, Genghis, you have to be able to shoot your favorite horse. Horse. Now, animal fans about you guys, we aren't, shooting anybody literally, but it's still important to understand what she meant. She said, hey, you can have the most incredible paragraph that you've ever written. Every word is beautiful. It's a powerful paragraph in isolation, but if it does not communicate the message, if it does not fit in your overall narrative, in your overall essay, you have to be willing to just cross it out. That's what she meant with being able to shoot your favorite horse. Now, same thing with your photos. If you look on my website on Dejan Studio, you will not see a single award-winning picture that I've shot, and I've shot a lot of award-winning pictures. But most of them, interestingly enough, are not really what my target bride is looking for. This luxury upscale bride, who loves photos, who appreciates the photography experience, typically, and certainly not her planner, because the planners, they look for, everything should be a little bit more clean, like the luxury planners, it should be clean, luxurious, happy, beautiful, pretty. But guess what? Some of my best pictures were shot, on the dance floor. There's liquor on the floor, the ties are loose, people are sweaty, and that's where the action and the raw emotion takes place, like the last 30 minutes of the reception. Note to photographers, if you guys go home early, you're missing so many precious photo opportunities. Some of the finest moments happen at the end of the night. That's where you get a lot of the award-winning photos, and you know what? It's quite remarkable that we that we don't have them on our website, but it really ties in with what I'm trying to tell you. Don't be shy to tell people about your awards in a confident way. Make sure people can see it somewhere on your website. But if the photos you shot that actually won the awards don't really speak to your ideal bride, you may want to consider leaving them off. And if you don't, it's all about, again, that ideal bride you're speaking to. Social media. You can use Pinterest, Google+, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. My favorite, the one that really works best for us, is Facebook. It's still Facebook, believe it or not. They made quite a few changes. It's become a little bit more difficult to really reach the folks you want to reach, but we still get good inquiries out of Facebook because, when we post a phenomenal photo from a wedding and tag the bride and maybe, tag a bridesmaid or the groom as well, then the message spreads, everybody sees it, and we've talked about it. The bridesmaids, the best friends, they're all kind of in that same age, same stage in life, and they're very passionate, they're enthusiastic, they're looking at those photos and say, oh my God, who shot that picture? It's great. And that's why it's also important that that picture be great. Facebook, your personal Facebook page, put whatever on it that you want, as long as it's kind of, not going to make you look bad. But on your professional page, really be selective. It has to speak to that ideal bride. It has to be absolutely perfect. Same with your blog. When you're blogging, you have full control over your blog. That's the beauty. When we talk about blogging, you can either submit images to wedding blogs. We've talked about them. They're influencers as well. But you have very little control over how your pictures are displayed, in which context they're displayed, the narrative that's going to be added to your photos. But instead, when you're when you're basically blogging with your own blog, you have full control, for better or worse, of what goes on there. As soon as you hit publish, that's when blogging really starts. And we'll talk about that as well. Blogging does not start when you actually write that blog. As soon as it's published, then you have a chance to show it to the world. And it's up to you to whom you show it and how you show it. But before you show it, make sure that does really speak to your ideal bride, the person you seek to attract. Now, as you know, you'll need some marketing materials such as business cards, some of the sample albums that you may leave at bridal boutiques and show to people. I personally don't really walk around with albums anymore. Quite frankly, I don't show any photos anymore when I meet people. I don't even bring my iPad anymore, even though I probably should. But when you're starting out, it's probably a good idea to have a portfolio with you. And again, it should speak to the bride you want to attract. Whether you use an electronic version with an iPad or a real physical album. But again, the point I'm trying to make is branding matters. Your business card should speak to that ideal bride. If she happens to be a luxury bride, make sure that that business card is not like these really thin papers that just go back and forth, that probably would not even survive, a transport in a wallet. You don't want that. or if you're more like you're, a do-it-yourself, very much eco-friendly bride, appeal to her a little bit with the colors. It should be recycled paper, etc. Just get a sense of what she wants and who she is, and invest in your marketing materials, prudently, and they should all complement your overall positioning, because you've heard it many times. Your whole marketing efforts are only as strong as the weakest link in your marketing materials and your marketing message. So everything has to be thought through well, and you should do the same thing. Now, let's finish this up. So where do you meet? And again, your ideal bride, if she happens to be a truly upscale, high-end bride, you got to know, where does she hang out? What does she like to do? If she's the person who loves to have a coffee in a fancy restaurant, and you're going to meet her there, she doesn't want to come to the studio, then you probably choose a restaurant like that, or maybe the Plaza Hotel in New York City, or say she is all about, she cares about environmentally friendly weddings. It's a very hot trend, right? You can look out there, and then maybe you want to go to a shop where she can get, oh good heavens, alarm. This is a sign that I should probably be wrapping up, folks. But all to say, back to your target audience, when you are showing a portfolio to your bride, and say she happens to be a Sikh Indian wedding, for instance, then she may tell you already in your contact form, hey, you know what, I will have a multi-day Indian wedding at the following venue. Then you should right away go and look up her venue, that you know what to speak about. And you should be sending her imagery and some galleries that really respond to her religion, her culture, etc., because that's oftentimes what they want to see. So if an Orthodox Jewish bride reaches out to you, you may not want to send her a Sikh Indian wedding, and vice versa. Even though if it's one of your strongest galleries, feel free to include it as well, because they still care about your artistry, but sometimes they just want to feel like, okay, you know what, they're speaking to me. They've done this before, they have experience. And these are very important points to understand, and same when you share your online gallery at the end of the wedding. Say it's fully edited and you want to find a very efficient way to share your gallery, then choose kind of a hosting solution for your photos, that's good, obviously, but that also, customize it to complement your website, your overall appearance, and make sure that the bride realizes, okay, it's the same high quality that she's received at all other touch points of interacting with you. And and I think that's pretty much it. I think that covers it. So we've covered a lot of ground. I think it all started with the fundamental concept, and we'll be referencing it quite often. So you may want to bookmark this particular podcast somehow, because it's all about the ideal bride. We're going to be referencing her quite often, because everything we do really, centers around this ideal bride. And you have to, first of all, sit back before you really, run your business efficiently. And there is a difference between running a business and a hobby. If you're here to run a business, and that's really what we're after at ZGL, then you have to always get back to this ideal bride with everything you do. So, as you can tell, a little bit tired today, but guess what? I'm about to head out to the beach, get some exercise, go get into the water. This is part of the lifestyle that we do here, because you can't just sit behind the desk. Some of my very best ideas actually don't come from right here. They come from the beach while I'm running or while I'm walking, because it just takes me away from my phone, from my emails, and I feel like that's a good lesson. We'll talk about that in the context of productivity, but you have to be fit, you have to be healthy, because without health we have nothing. Nothing is worth doing if you don't have your health. And fitness is essential if you don't want to look fatigued and tired at the end of the night, while you're shooting a wedding, and you may just not have the strength anymore to capture those photos, at the end of a long wedding day that you should be capturing. And finally, we always talk about working less, working smarter. You can see I'm tired. I worked pretty long last night. I was actually on Skype with my web developer in Thailand until about 2:30 in the morning. And you know, sometimes that's just what it takes. Sometimes you do have to put the hard work in. You know, everything here is transparent. The idea is to outsource most of the things that really just don't make you money and spend more time on the activities you truly enjoy, that embody who you are, that really set the, you know, the groundwork for you to make money with your passion. And that's what we focus on. But, you know, nothing is perfect. We don't work in an academic world here. You know, we're all like you. You know, we get up every day and we still have to earn a living. And we still have to carve out our place, and we have to look towards retirement. And these are a lot of the issues we'll talk about. So this wraps up our episode 2 of our podcast at ZGL. We're absolutely thrilled to have you. You know, we're excited about what we're doing. You know, this is truly for you. That's what we're doing this for. And if we're not addressing your most pressing questions and needs, then we're not doing our job properly. This is not about fluff. This is not about academics. This is about stuff that really works, you know, stuff that has been informed from the real life that we see each and every week, you know, in the field. We're trying to bring you our learnings from our failures and from our successes and communicate them to you. So if you enjoyed this podcast, this is what I'd ask you to do right now. I'd like you to leave some comments below. Tell us, you know, kind of share your thoughts about your ideal bride. What are we missing? You know, which parts of what we talked about really appeal to you? If you know somebody who may be struggling to identify, you know, the ideal bride, or is maybe not even thinking in terms of the ideal bride, please send them, you know, the podcast right now. Feel free to share it. And finally, if you have any questions that you'd like me to take on the podcast, you know, in the future, please send them to us. You know, you can email them to us, or, you know, just leave them in the comment section if you think it's a question that everybody should be, you know, kind of discussing. But preferably send us them, you know, your comments by email. We'll try to get to them on future podcasts. It will tell us a little bit more about what you really want to hear. And so thanks again for joining. You know, ZGL thrives because of you. We're excited. We're just getting warmed up, and looking forward to seeing you on podcast number 3 very soon.
Thanks for listening to the Zero Gravity Learning Podcast at www.zerogravitylearning.com.